I'm Debra Sweet, and I'm the director of The World Can't Wait, which is engaged very deeply in stopping the crimes of our government, particularly the illegitimate, unjust, immoral wars begun under the Bush regime and the regime of indefinite detention. Right now, this week in mid-April 2013, we're very involved in supporting the hunger strikers at Guantanamo. Probably 50 to 100 of the 166 men at Guantanamo are on a hunger strike that's gone now into its third month as a desperate act to let the world know that they're still being held in a living hell and unable to find any way to leave Guantanamo because all roads, legal and humanitarian and through other states, have been closed. Under the president's actions, Obama, who, of course, everyone remembers, promised to close Guantanamo now more than 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. So we in World Can't Wait. We actually started in 2005 with the mission of driving out the Bush regime. We wanted to create a political situation in this country where Bush and Cheney in particular were forced from office in disrepute. And they were kind of forced from office because another president was elected in due course, but it wasn't the kind of decisive repudiation that was really needed against the whole course that they had taken over the 8 years of the Bush regime. And we felt when 2009 came along that there was still going to be a need for people who stuck with principle and said, look, whoever's president, these wars, for empire, the occupations, the indefinite detention, and the police state surveillance at home had to be confronted and stopped by actions of the people, that they weren't going to be stopped by whoever was elected president. And indeed, we were so right. And we've spent now more time as World Can't Wait under the Obama administration than we ever did as fighting politically the Bush administration. And bringing us to this moment when the choice for U.S. warfighting is rapidly shifting towards unmanned aerial vehicles and continuing with not only indefinite detention, but with another development primarily brought under the Obama administration of the targeted killing. And both of those things, the targeted killing and the unmanned aerial vehicles, have combined to create a situation where the president now has the right, granted by himself under executive order, to decide who's going to be on these lists and who's going to be killed. We are very concerned, and we have been for 4 years, that non-combatants are the primary group of people killed in these strikes, that they violate international law demonstrably, and that they create a situation where people righteously in the countries targeted, which is mainly the South Asian countries, which are Muslim, have every reason to absolutely hate what the U.S. is doing in targeting non-combatants, civilians, and creating this chaos in those countries of permanent war without any regard for the sovereignty of those countries. All this being done by the United States.
So, Debra, tell me, how did you get to this point in your life? Like, what got you involved in The World Can't Wait? Why did you become an anti-war activist? Like, what's the progression here?
Well, it goes back to the U.S. in Vietnam when I was a teenager in the 1960s, coming to grips with the fact that watching the news every night and actually knowing people who were sent to Vietnam, drafted and otherwise, I just opened my eyes, and I lived in a major university town where there, fortunately was intense protest against the Vietnam War. I was drawn into that, and I was drawn into very early in my life and appreciation for the civil rights activists that were around me. And I put all that together and I said, this country is really up to no good. It's just up to no damn good. And what am I going to do about it? I felt that I needed to be involved, including when I was very young. And luckily, when you're that age, there's no restraints on you. Nobody's really able to tell you that you can't do something. So you decide that it's time to open your mouth. And I have been involved in opposing every single one of the U.S. wars since then, all of them illegitimate, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And very many other policies the U.S. has been involved in, domestically and internationally, that have done nothing but spread empire and have never have had the interests of people in the world, or including people in this country, in mind. The military expansion, the domination of other countries is only for the purpose of increasing U.S. empire, imperialist domination, and actually exploiting more thoroughly the rest of the world. And I'm really against that. I became a revolutionary at a young age. And, thanks to the climate in the 60s and finding people who have been very consistent in opposing this all along, I've been able to stay on that path. And World Can't Wait is just a natural vehicle to give people a voice in a situation where the major political parties do nothing but squash our voices. So World Can't Wait's been involved in this opposition to U.S. drone warfare and surveillance from the very beginning, and we have been part of pulling together a national network to stop U.S. drone warfare and surveillance and activities in this month of April all across the country.
And what's wrong with drones, right? They're going to save American lives. You said that they were violating international law. Can you spell this out for people a little bit more? What's the issue here?
Yeah, the issue is not so much the technology, although this technology is so sophisticated now that it really creates a situation where there's no defense against drones. Mm-hmm. There's no way to survive a drone attack. There's no way, especially with the utter lack of a system of accountability, checks and balances that we're always told is the United States forte. They don't exist in this war. This is a lawless war without borders and without time. It's everything goes under the authorization of military force that was passed in the wake of 9/11 by the Bush regime and now used by the Obama administration to justify really just anything. Mm-hmm. What's wrong with drones is not only the technology, however. What's wrong at its base? What's wrong is not only the technology. What's wrong is that we have a system that rapaciously demands a military presence, especially at the core of the Western world, being the oil lands that one country must, if it's to be an imperialist empire, must control at the exclusion of others. And it's this drive for military domination of the world which is bringing about ever more dangerous weapons. It brought about, after all, the nuclear weapons. And we're living in the only country that's actually ever used nuclear weapons. I remind people that because we're constantly told that Iran or North Korea or another country is the next big danger and that the U.S. has to stop them from having nuclear weapons. But there's no one to stop the U.S. from having these weapons. And it's the U.S. that has the record of using them. We really have to keep that in mind, living in this country. And the most dangerous thing right now is to understand that our government, which is the largest economy in world history, the largest military, by far, with the hugest military budget, is using it not to keep anyone safe, including people living in this country, but to extend its influence and empire. Whatever they tell us, maybe for public consumption, but I'm telling you the real deal. And all of this warfare carried out in our name is fundamentally illegitimate.
Mhm.
It's
Um,
not done to any good purpose. It is killing civilians. They have destroyed the lives of 1 million people in Iraq directly, displaced 4.5 million people, and destroyed a whole society. Every major political structure and physical structure in Iraq was destroyed: the sewer system, the water system, electric, health, judicial, education. It was all wiped out in this occupation. And none of this was brought any good to the Iraqi people, and certainly didn't bring any good to the people in this country. So
um,
that's this drone war is about. It's about how Obama can extend this in a secret, quiet way without putting U.S. troops on the ground.
what do you think are like the top three issues that people, when they talk about the anti-war movement or the peace movement, are not getting?
Well, one thing they're not getting, that these wars are continuing in a covert way, without any debate, much less among the public, that people don't know the terms. They have no idea the vast amounts of U.S. material and money and attention that are going to feeding the wars, the continuing occupation of Afghanistan, the drone wars in probably at least 8 countries. That's Yemen, Libya, Iraq, Afghanistan, Somalia, possibly the Philippines. Um, this is spreading without anyone's knowledge. That's number one. Number two is the destruction that these wars wrought. People think, oh, the Iraq war is over. It's not over for the Iraqi people at all.
Mhm.
The American war destroyed the country of Iraq. And what has been rebuilt to the extent that it has is are structures that are completely dependent on the billions of dollars of corruption that the U.S. installed in Iraq. The situation for women is worse. Women have less freedom than they did before the U.S. came, when Saddam Hussein, that tyrant, was in power. So these wars are not over, and they did terrible, terrible destruction. And number three, I think what people are vastly unaware of, maybe this is ignorance or maybe it's ignorance, it's willful ignorance at any rate, are two more things. One is that American lives are no more important than anyone else's lives, regardless of what Fox News or CNN or even PBS says. American lives are not more important than anyone else's lives. And the second thing is the vast surveillance state that has been installed in this country since 9/11, and the fact that there are 1 million people within the U.S. involved in one way or another with the surveillance state, of allowing the state to have all the privacy and the people to have no privacy. So our actions of dissent, in the face of this, are extremely important. No one knows that the actions that we take are the most decisive. There's no politician up there in Washington or anyone else or anywhere else that is going to take care of this for you, for us. These are actions that a politically aware and growingly politically sophisticated group of people in this country, even if we are a distinct minority, is responsible for taking, to challenge all of these assumptions that people have, and to let people know it doesn't have to be this way. It's just this way. There's no divine right. There's no great plan working. It just happens to be this way. It's fundamentally unjust. It's immoral and illegitimate. And we have the responsibility of challenging it wherever possible and working to create a vastly different society.
What alternatively that I talked with Elliot Adams about does, or no, not Elliot, excuse me, David Swanson about, does abolition of the war machine look like? Like, how do we get to that point? How do we resist in an effective way?
Well, it would take a complete revolution, a complete revolution of the economic and political structures to get rid of the war machine, because what's driving the war machine is the drive for imperialist domination, as I said, and you can't have an empire without it. So that is a whole process which would take millions and millions of people. It would take revolutionary leadership. I believe that exists, but it's not very well known. What World Can't Wait is involved with is this process of waking up the people in the country, and there are very concrete ways that we go about that. I mentioned the Guantanamo hunger strike, and we, for the last 8 years, have been out on the streets with orange jumpsuits, which have come to symbolize the illegitimate prison in Guantanamo and all the things that the Bush regime did to torture prisoners secretly in black sites and in prisons that they ran in Afghanistan and Guantanamo and Iraq at Abu Ghraib and many other places that we don't even know about yet. That visual presence is extremely important because people don't know, and they need to be challenged and they need to be woken up. We go into schools with the program World Can't Wait has called We Are Not Your Soldiers. And this is a explicitly counter-recruiting program. The U.S. government spends $7 billion a year getting access to high school students across the country. By law, they can go into any school that gets federal money and pollute the minds of youth and sign them up. So we, in a very small way, of course, much funded, much less, take veterans of Iraq and Afghanistan into high schools, and we talk to them. The veterans just simply say, look, this is what happened to me in Iraq and Afghanistan. You don't want to do this. You do not want to lose your humanity or your life or this. And these are all extremely important actions. And I believe all the larger anti-war actions, the drone actions that we're going to be taking at drone bases like Hancock in Syracuse and across the country at Creech out in Nevada, are really important because it puts this issue in front of people. And it says, including to the government, there are people here who know what you're doing. We don't accept it. And we really demand a better world. That can mean things to a lot of people. To me, it would mean that you would have a situation where the people in common were controlling the resources of the country. And in fact, our goal would be to do away with the United States as it is. After all, it's responsible for much of the misery in the world and has stolen much of the resources of the world.
So on April 26th to 28th, this convergence is happening in Syracuse, New York, Resisting Drones, Global War and Empire. And I'm just wondering, what are you going to be presenting on there, or what's your role going to be during the convergence?
Well, I signed up. I'm going to be doing a workshop that I hope people will attend that's really looking at the roots of where is this drone war coming from? How is it being carried out? How are they getting away with it? But most importantly and fundamentally, why is the power structure in this country carrying out these secret wars using drones and targeted killing and indefinite detention around the world? We must be able to grapple with and answer that question because it implies so much about future potentially revolutionary change. We've got to understand what we're up against. We will be taking actions the weekend after next in Syracuse, which are not revolutionary actions. That's not the revolution, but these actions of political protest are extremely important in creating a situation where people, again, open up their eyes and look at what's being done and know what's happening at Hancock Air Force Base. So I want to tie that in. And then on Sunday, when we've taken a nonviolent, civil disobedient, but very political action to protest at Hancock Air Force Base. I'll be one of the speakers.
Cool. Awesome. I plan on being at both days, Saturday and Sunday,
Great.
so I can videotape that talk that you're going to give, which will be great.
Good, 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 good.
Um, so you talked a little bit about the Guantanamo hunger strikers. I'm wondering, there's another sort of issue on the chart of current news stories of the military-industrial complex and anti-war activities. And I was wondering, do you have any information, or can you give an update on what's going on with Bradley Manning right now?
I would be happy to do so.
Okay.
Bradley goes on military trial on June 3rd. That's a Monday. And this has been building up, as people know, for more than 2 years now, more than 3 years. And he's charged with very, very serious crimes that nobody else has been charged with, giving information to the enemy, which potentially carries the death penalty. The government has said that they're not going to ask for the death penalty. Should we believe them? I don't know. They're certainly going to ask for life in prison. And Bradley, as I hope people know, in February, accepted some responsibility for releasing some information, including the hugely important video that was named Collateral Murder about the U.S. Apache helicopter attack that killed Iraqis, including 2 journalists, and was a horrific introduction for many people who didn't know about the U.S. warfighting doctrines. 360 degrees rotational fire, kill everything that moves, which was taken straight from Vietnam. Bradley did this and released the Afghan War Diaries, the Iraq War Logs, and then all this tremendously important diplomatic cables from Cablegate that really give people insight, tremendous amount of information on how the U.S. deals with other countries, how dominating, joking about, bullying, lying to other countries is just complete standard operating procedure for the U.S. government. So this is what Bradley brought for us, and he's facing extremely serious consequences. It's very important that we finally got to hear him speak. People can see more about that on worldcan'twait.net or bradleymanning.org. And we in New York here are organizing buses to go down on Saturday, June 1st, for a big demonstration at Fort Meade, Maryland, where we're calling on people from all over to come and represent support for Bradley, and then as many people as possible to stay around for the trial that begins that following Monday, June 3rd. There's still money needed for Bradley. You can donate it at bradleymanning.org. And most importantly, there's a tremendous amount of outreach. People should know who Bradley Manning is. There's a web page called I Am Bradley Manning, and you can take your picture with a sign saying, I'm Bradley Manning, and circulate this on social media and other ways. And I think that's still very important. Nobody in this country should not know who Bradley Manning is. I'm in Times Square a lot for political protests, and we run into tourists from around the world. And you know what? They know Bradley Manning, and they know Guantanamo, and they know a tremendous amount about what the U.S. is doing. But the average U.S. tourist doesn't know any of that.
I was wondering if you wanted to talk about why people should care, why they should go to this convergence, and what, like why? Like, it's a why
starting with why Hancock Air Force Base is because it is one of the major drone bases in North America. It's where the U.S. is launching unmanned aerial vehicles, both for weaponized ones and surveillance, to go halfway around the world and kill people who were identified by, who knows what. How do people get targeted by drones? It's information the U.S. picked up, and I seriously doubt whether the war planners and targeters really know who they're killing, and what's more troubling is they don't even care, most of them. Although we know that the occupation of being a drone pilot right now is extremely fraught, and it is very subject to post-traumatic stress disorder, even more than the pilots who are actually in planes killing people. That's a strange bit, but it's one of the things that we've uncovered. This is a utterly inhumane, outrageous practice that no government should be allowed to get away with. And it's at Hancock Air Force Base outside of Syracuse. There have been dedicated people protesting there for several years since we learned about this. They're calling on all of us to come and increase their numbers. And we should come from everywhere that's possible, young and old, anybody who believes in what this country says it stands for, or those of us who really think that that's a crock. We don't believe anything that the government says they stand for, and we look at all of it with great anger and skepticism. Anyway, all of us should come together. We're marching for an extremely important cause, and we want people around the world to see hundreds or thousands of us there on Sunday, April 28th, united in calling for an end to the U.S. drone war. And we hope that message reaches across the globe to people who are being targeted by these illegitimate weapons.
Can you talk a little bit more about the PTSD the drone pilots are dealing with?
Yeah, I don't think we have a lot of statistics, but we understand, first of all, that 55% of the pilots the U.S. Air Force is training right now are for unmanned vehicles. And when you think about it, I'm sitting about 18 inches from a computer screen right now. If I were a drone pilot, I would be seeing everything that the drone sees with its very sophisticated equipment. I could be watching every cat and dog, horse, donkey, cow person that comes back and forth. As a drone pilot, I could be surveilling, and then, bam, I get the order to fire. And I'm vaporizing those people. That is the kind of warfare that very few people since bayonet fighting have participated in. You think back to the First World War, it's probably the last time that a sustained significant number of warfighters had this kind of close-up combat to see the faces of the people that they were killing. Because modern warfare has increasingly removed people from the battlefield, and we're up to a situation right now where in the Iraq and Afghanistan war, 90% of the casualties are non-combatants. It's a small percentage of the people actually fighting in uniform that are killed in these wars right now. So here are the drone pilots sitting in a position where they are up close and personal. They're watching their victims, and then they're killing them. Cold-bloodedly or not, I don't know, but I understand that this has potentially deep psychological effects because, remember, they're working 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. or whatever their shift is, and then they're going back home to the family, the children, a half an hour later. How do you adjust to that?
Yeah.
You're going to pay the price.
Yeah, it's kind of. I heard Brian Terrell talk about this when he was in Syracuse a couple of years ago, when 38 people were arrested, and it was sort of the first time I heard someone describe this process, and then I actually found video of it online.
Yes.
And that was pretty it was horrific to watch that. It's just like, whoa, you can you're right, they get really close. You can see every single detail. I guess I didn't think about how that would impact someone, but thank you for elaborating a little bit on that. I just have a few more questions. Can you tell me where people can get more information? What are your chosen news or your sort of sites for the convergence?
You can get specific information on the action in Syracuse, April 26th through 28th, at the website for Upstate Drone Action. That's upstate New York, Syracuse, and all the related cities in upstate New York. You can find important and specific information on the U.S. drone war at knowdrones.com. That's KNOW, drones.com. And then you can find an overview of all the actions going on against the war and the drones and indefinite detention at worldcan'twait.net.
Great. So are there any other questions that you'd like to be asked that I haven't asked you so far? I mean, I'm sure there's a lot, but...
I think the biggest question for anybody watching this is, what difference can you make? What can be done? Is it possible to change anything? And I just want to tell you that it is not only hugely necessary, but it's possible. The only thing that ever changes what a government does is the action of the people under it. Very fundamentally. It is up to us, and there's a tremendous amount of responsibility in our hands, and it doesn't take everybody. It doesn't take everybody. It can be a relatively small percentage of the population who sees what's wrong, is outraged by it, and really demands that change happen to make a big difference. We need to have a huge impact right now as the U.S. is contemplating, perhaps another attack on Iran. We have to be very active right now in undercutting the legitimacy of these wars for empire abroad, this indefinite detention, and the massive police state surveillance at home. And we can be. We just need thousands of more people.
Well, thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing you a week from Friday or Saturday.
Saturday, I'll be there, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
I'll see you Saturday. Hi, this is Debra Sweet in New York City. You are watching Rochester Indymedia, and keep watching.
Washed over the side, tumble the sky, slow diver down, 2 feet land on a different ground. You can't live easily, you can't even speak, but all of them speak.